to all the dispossessed youth of Africa, for perpetuation of communion with ancestral spirits through the fight for African freedom, and in the firm faith that the dead, the living, and the unborn will unite to build the destroyed shrines. Selah. Hello and welcome, beloveds, to another episode of Wake Up Africa. I really do pray that you are well in all your ways and that you're moving into living life truly on your own terms, not even just moving into it, that now you're actually establishing, you're building the foundation of your own brand new narrative, beloveds, because we are in such a special time where we get to start a new book of life. Like, this is not an opportunity that is afforded to many. You know, it is a great honor and a great privilege to be born at such a time as this, beloveds, where you can transition from one world to another as a living soul, regardless of all the obstacles and everything they've thrown into us, that you can transfer from one age to another as a living being, beloveds, that you get to experience this great shift. It's going to be a physical shift as much as it is a spiritual shift, and there are so many unknowns. But it's a great honor. And there's a certain foolishness that I wanted to address that, you know, it happens across Africa. Let me know if it happens in your part of the world, because I found this so crazy. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because it actually causes a lot of destruction. I don't even know if I should go too much into the story that brought this up, but beloveds, this thing of having spiritual mothers and spiritual fathers and calling your pastors and your preacher men and your preacher women your mothers is shameful. It's disrespectful to your your real spiritual family. And it's dangerous, because a lot of the preachers and the pastors of this time are those false prophets that your Bible even tells you about, beloveds. And they are involved in so much more. You know, maybe in the beginning they start innocent. I guess Spirit is confirming what I'm saying. They start off all innocent and, you know, really for the Lord and teaching people about Jesus and all this stuff. But in order to keep that momentum going, in order to perform signs and wonders, you see, we weren't in the age of signs and wonders. The atmosphere was too dense to raise someone from the dead, to heal someone. It could happen, but it was such a dense energy because it came with so much. You see, the thing about healing, okay, maybe I'll share this, because a lot of you have told me you have healing hands. The thing about healing is that the way the mystics used to heal is they would absorb that imbalance in you, whether it was cancer, whether it was a flu, and they would take it in them and then they would transmute that into something positive. But they had to be on such a high vibe where that thing wouldn't stay in them and couldn't stay in them because of the vibration they're on. So they'd absorb it from you, but it hits them and it transmutes. It like fizzles out and goes. That's where the power of healing came from. And that's why these healers were totally separated from the people. Because it was, you know, that thing of absorbing. You see that in the mystic story of, like, you know, when Jesus his robe was touched. There's a lot of stories that they share that are like, can I call them allegorical? And how his power was taken. That's what happens when someone is healing. But we were in the demonic age, beloveds, if I can call it that. And in that demonic age, people didn't have access to this because we didn't have access to our higher vibrational selves. And so because we didn't have access to that higher vibrational self, what you'll find is like a lot of the great healers and really powerful teachers of our time, in the end, literally died of cancers and things that you would have thought that a healer should never die from. The cancers, all tumors, all these things. It's because at some point as healers, and we heal through speaking. There's people who heal through preaching, through speaking to people. Just their energy, their vibes changes everything. I swear this should be a show on healing. But they weren't able, because of the density, they weren't able to continuously remove that disease from their own aura, from their own vibe. And so eventually some of those things remained. There was a residue of other people's imbalances that they weren't able to, to absorb and transmute. And so many, when I think of them, they died in hospitals, which is just weird. And so the reason I even shared that is because we've been in an age where people have been, the ones who can really heal aren't even out there like that. They're hidden in the mountains, by the oceans, But we've been in a demonic age. So the spirit that many have been using to heal has been demonic spirits. And you see, demonic spirits are like Band-Aid spirits because they're not God. Because it does take, to be able to transmute like that, you have to have a divine connection. And the Most High has to be pouring on you continuously so that you can kind of transmute those vibes. Like the divine is just constantly showering you with her vibe, with her energy, with her brightness. So nothing of darkness stays. Like you're just constantly being renewed, constantly being showered. So there is that divine connection for many healers. But you also have to be of a higher vibration where that is the connection and you're not thinking it's you. But a lot of the people who are healing right now, or who are operating in kind of signs and wonders or performing miracles, are employing demonic powers. They're manipulating energy. And it doesn't last. It's not a complete thing. It almost feels like a massive show. Like if I think of some of the pastors across Africa who used to do this, cripples walking and it is all a manipulation of energy, beloveds. But this thing of calling yourself a spiritual daughter of someone or a spiritual son of someone, you do not know what kind of bloodline you're connecting yourself to. You don't know what that preacher man does in private. Even if he's not using the dark arts to attract people, to attract massive crowds, to heal, even if he's not using those demonic elements, even if he's an unclean man, which means he, participates in adultery, participates in all kinds of, things that as a holy man he shouldn't be. That soiling and that spirit, you've connected yourself to that, so you'll have that. But many of these pastors and preachers who have, mega churches in their community, even in their community, they're employing the dark arts, beloveds. They're high occultists. And when you call them your spiritual mother or your spiritual father, you join their little cult, which means they have access to your gifts, they have access to your energy. And if they need to sacrifice someone, they have access to you for that too. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back.
Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, Africa.
Welcome back, beloveds, to Wake Up Africa. My name is Dr. Mumbi Saraki. I wanted to talk about spiritual mothers and spiritual fathers, but I kind of got into healing in the first segment, and I think that's just someone needs to hear that, someone who has those giftings or is moving into operating in those giftings. And I think I'll definitely start to get more into those things, how the gifts operate, since now we're coming into them. But it's very, very dangerous who you attach yourself to, beloveds, who you call your spiritual mother and who you call your spiritual father. Like, seriously, we need to stop that ridiculousness in Africa. No real man of the Most High or no truly holy, high-level spiritual man will want you to call them their father or their mother. It's like an occult binding. It creates a tie between you and them. And you see, a lot of these churches, you see, churches originally, even with that thing at the top, it was to collect energy from spirit, and then it was over in a holy place, and so it would collect energy and then it would spread. And if you check where, like, let's say the Roman Catholics, where they've built a lot of their churches and shrines in the middle of nowhere, it's because there's a certain energy vortex there that they want to take advantage of. But the church was kind of to harvest energy, beloveds. When everyone is in there singing and worshiping and getting emotional, there's an energy that is released and that is harvested, not by the Most High, because the Most High don't need your energy. He already high. The highest love, the highest understanding, the highest creation, the highest everything. Omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent. Like, there's nothing the Most High needs from you but for you to live your best life. But when you create these soul ties, beloveds, it's like they can siphon off a lot of your blessings and a lot of your energy, because blessings also come in energy. And they can give those to their prominent church members or themselves. That's why you'll see wherever the church is. Like, there's so many churches near my village, it's kind of sad. But whenever I pass them on Sunday, the pastor always has a car. The pastor is always, even if it's a shack, beloveds, the pastor is doing well. So what do you think he's collecting every Sunday? Energy is the new money, beloveds. And a lot of them have been using this. They ride on their church members. And so now when you say you're their child, you're their daughter, you're their son, you're putting them above you. And so they can they have access to your giftings. They have access to your records because you're open to them. And that's one thing I shared, I think, in a previous video, about how spiritual and psychic attacks only happen from close family members and even church leaders, because you've opened yourself up to them. So your natural spiritual defense is totally down. There are people who have lost their lives because they call a certain person their papa, or a certain person their mama, or who is not. Because they're attaching that, like, where is that even spoken of anywhere? And there's a lot of magic that's done with that, with the tithing and the spiritual mom and spiritual dad. It's a cult, beloved. That's part of the religious psychosis. And it's very hard to come out of. That's why people find it, because I've gotten so many emails where people are like, I'm trying to get out of this religious psychosis, but I feel guilty, I feel anxious, I feel like sometimes I'm drawn back, sometimes, and it's hard because you've created a soul tie by calling someone your father or your mother who's not. Like, what are you doing? And usually that person is even spiritually beneath you if you were to look in the spiritual realm, but you're bowing to them. Because that's the highest title right now. Don't they say your mother is your God on earth? Same could be said of your father. They say that's the most important person. So if you're just calling some random person your mother imagine what that does, beloveds. And so a lot of you who want to break out of this spiritual psychosis, you need to cut these ties to your pastors. And especially if they know you have giftings, beloveds. There's some pastors who don't have any gift of prophecy, but because some spiritual daughter or some spiritual son has that, and this is my spiritual father, they can write on that and they can use that gifting and prophesy. But the minute you leave that church, they lose that gifting. And you see, when you start calling people physically your spiritual mother or your spiritual father, beloveds, they can come into your dreams and do many things. Like, it's a very risky thing to do, beloveds, because remember, we're spiritual beings having a human experience, as above, so below. So there's some things you can declare with your tongue on this level that will impact you spiritually. in the spiritual atmosphere of this world. And they will block you from your own true spiritual family, true spiritual powers. I remember a while back, there's a church I used to go to, and this pastor, there was so many, it was all young people, you know, and he also used to do these overnight keshas and stuff, but the young people were so gifted, like, and he would allow people to practice their giftings. But this pastor, I mean, he lived a very comfortable life. They very well off, whatever, but he would come and he had this same church in the same building for like 20, 25 years. Who knew where they lived? They had a nice car, everything. But I always wondered, because he'd always have different people like, oh, you feel like you're a prophet, prophesy, do this, oracle, speak, you know. And then after all that, he would call and say, you know, you need this healing and you need that healing, and as your spiritual father. And then he'd literally, you know, the way they make people fall in the spirit. I've always felt it's like they're taking something. That's why people pass out. Although there's a lot of hypnosis involved as well, and there's stuff they put on their hands. Hey, beloveds, it's a magical show. I wish people knew when I say religious psychosis that it's really real. But beloveds, I felt like every time after everyone had kind of revealed their gifts, he would kind of welcome the people who felt he would get into this really deep thing, and it would almost be like, and singing and everything. And it's like you'd get into this trance. And then he'd offer everyone, you know, as young people, you may have done this wrong, you may have done that, come to the front. And you're already in this heightened situation. Memi would be crying and screaming, and then they'd go and he'd be laying hands on people and they'd be passing out. What was really going on? What if, as the spiritual father, he was just collecting people's gifts, beloved? We need to stop being so trustworthy with our energy. And sometimes you need to look, maybe the bad luck you're having in your family, the misfortune you're having in your family is because you've attached yourselves to spiritual fathers and mothers and situations like that. Tuko pamoja.